What if the person you trusted most waited until you closed your eyes to strike? The night air in Newport carried the smell of salt and rain, drifting through the cracked windows of our coastal street. I remember how quiet it felt, almost too quiet, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Jude Keene had been the kind of man who blended into that stillness. Steady, dependable, the kind of neighbor you waved to across the yard because you knew he'd always wave back. Hours earlier, he'd shared dinner at his kitchen table, laughing softly as the radio played an old Bruce Springsteen track. His fork clinked against the plate. His wife said little, her eyes fixed elsewhere. By midnight, that laughter was gone. I keep replaying the image. Jude retreating to the bedroom, folding his glasses, setting them carefully on the nightstand. A man closing his day with ordinary rituals, never knowing it would be his last. The next morning, the headline would shatter Newport's calm. Man stabbed 12 times in his sleep. But in this moment, right before the truth unraveled, there was only silence, the hush of the ocean outside, and a locked door hiding what no one wanted to believe. And I can't shake the question. Was it self-defense? Or was it something far darker? How do you measure a life? By the way someone dies, or by the quiet traces they leave behind? I learned quickly that Jude Keene wasn't just a headline. He was the kind of man who fixed leaky faucets for neighbors without asking for a favor in return. At the corner bakery, the owner still kept a folded dollar bill Jude once tucked into the tip jar, pressed flat as if it meant more than its worth. He had a way of making people feel seen, even in the smallest exchanges. That night, he'd promised his mother, Iris, that he'd call her in the morning. She told me later that she kept the phone on her pillow, waiting for it to ring. It never did. What haunts me most isn't the blood or the violence. It's the little things left behind. His leather boots lined neatly by the door. His favorite Red Sox cap, still hanging on the coat rack. A scribbled grocery list for the next day: milk, bread, dog food. A life interrupted mid-sentence. And here's the twist that cut deeper than the knife wounds. Hours before his death, a message blinked across his phone. Words from someone no one expected. A voice that shifted the story from tragedy into something far more tangled. It made me wonder, was Jude's death really the end of the story, or just the beginning of a secret he never had time to tell? What if the first clue wasn't the body, but the silence that followed? That night in Newport, silence carried more weight than screams. Jude's friends noticed it first. He always answered texts. Quick, polite, sometimes with nothing more than a thumbs-up emoji. But hours after dinner, messages went unanswered. The last one, from his coworker at the shipyard, hung unread like a ghost in the blue glow of the screen. By dawn, a pattern of worry had formed. His neighbor, Clara Dune, told me she stepped outside to bring in her trash cans and paused. Jude's porch light, usually turned off by midnight, still glared against the misty street. She swore she heard faint movement inside, something dragging, then nothing at all. When Jude's brother, Matthew, knocked on the door that morning, the house gave no answer. He pressed his ear against the wood. No footsteps, no television hum, just the low, electric buzz of the porch light burning into daylight. And then came the detail that unraveled the calm. A trail of water streaked across the kitchen tiles, leading toward the bedroom. Not blood, not yet, just water, clean, clear, but smeared as though someone had tried to erase what could never truly be hidden. I can still feel the unease in that hallway. A house too neat, a door too tightly shut, a silence so deliberate it felt staged. The question that lingered wasn't where Jude was. It was who wanted him erased so carefully that even the sound of his absence became the first alarm. What if the first story told to police was built on lies, and the body itself refused to agree? When officers stepped inside the Keene home, the air struck them first. It didn't smell like death yet. It smelled of bleach, heavy, stinging, clinging to the back of the throat. A house too clean for the violence it contained. Marissa Keene stood in the living room, her robe drawn tight, her face pale but steady. She told them Jude lunged at her during an argument, that she grabbed the nearest knife in fear. "It was him or me," she whispered. But Detective Rowan Hale noticed details her words couldn't cover. Jude's body was still beneath the bedroom sheets, wounds precise, patterned. No overturned furniture, no bruises on her arms, and her slippers dry, spotless, despite the streaks of water drying on the kitchen floor. The first contradictions arrived quickly. Clara Doone, the neighbor, insisted she hadn't heard shouting that night, only the dragging sound. Iris Keene, Jude's mother, told police her son had called her earlier, his voice calm, nothing hinting at violence. Then there was Marissa's phone. A string of deleted messages recovered within hours. Conversations with someone who wasn't her husband. Someone urging her to be free. The silence of the crime scene cracked open into questions no one wanted to face. Was this really self-defense, or the premeditated erasure of a man who never saw the blade coming? What if the truth was right there in the evidence? Yet everyone chose to look away. By the third day, the investigation had already slipped. Officers misplaced the first set of photographs, forcing them to retake images after the scene had been touched. A bloody handprint on the bathroom door went uncollected for hours, smudged by gloved hands that should have preserved it. Iris Keene, Jude's mother, sat outside the station clutching her son's wedding photo, demanding answers. Her voice cracked as she told me, "They're letting her walk free while my boy lies in the ground." The desperation in her eyes cut sharper than any blade. Then came the discovery that shifted everything. A neighbor down the block, a delivery driver named Sean Kettering, handed over security footage from his dashcam. It didn't show the stabbing, it showed something else. At 11:42 p.m., less than an hour before Jude's death, a figure slipped into the Keene home through the back door. The outline wasn't his. When detectives confronted Marissa, she denied anyone else being there. But the footage was undeniable. Another shadow in a story already dripping with contradictions. The failure wasn't just in evidence mishandling. It was in trust. Had investigators already decided Jude's life was a domestic tragedy, ignoring the darker threads weaving through Newport's quiet streets? And here's the question that refused to leave me. Was Jude killed by the woman who vowed to love him, or by the stranger who vanished into the night, carrying a secret that police almost erased forever? What if the person grieving beside the coffin was the same one who held the knife? The funeral drew half the town. Black umbrellas crowded the church steps, but all eyes weren't on the casket. They were on her. Marissa sat in the front pew, face hidden behind a veil, fingers tapping the wood like a nervous rhythm only she could hear. Some whispered she hadn't shed a single tear. Then came the interruption no one expected. Father Rowan, who led the service, stopped mid-sentence when a uniformed officer entered with a manila folder in hand. Murmurs rippled through the pews. The folder wasn't just paper. It carried the dashcam footage and something far worse. The autopsy addendum. Jude hadn't just been stabbed. There were defensive wounds carved deep across his palms, as if he had fought off someone much taller, stronger. That revelation shook the room, because Marissa barely cleared 5 feet. In the back row, a stranger rose. He wasn't part of the family, nor had anyone seen him before. His name was whispered later, Caleb Dorsey, a drifter who had done roofing jobs across the county. The footage caught his silhouette leaving the Keene property at 11:42 p.m. Why was he here now at the funeral, watching Marissa with eyes that didn't blink? The town wanted answers. The detectives wanted proof. And I wanted to know, was Caleb a mourner, a witness, or the ghostly figure who'd walked into that house and left Jude Keene bleeding in silence? What if the truth wasn't hidden in the crime, but in who refused to look at it? The courtroom was suffocating. Reporters packed the benches, sketch artists' pencils scratching like insects. Marissa finally broke her silence. Not with tears, but with words that cut deeper than any blade. She admitted she saw the killer. She admitted she watched Jude fight for his life. And she admitted something else. She stayed silent because the man standing over Jude wasn't a stranger. It was her brother, Nolan. The same brother who carried her on his shoulders as a child. The same brother she once swore could never harm a soul. Gasps tore through the room. Nolan sat 3 rows back, jaw locked, veins rising across his temple. His eyes didn't shift, not even when the dashcam stills were revealed. His truck's headlights flickering outside Jude's home at 11:40 p.m. But the most chilling moment wasn't the evidence. It was when Marissa turned to him and whispered, "You smiled while he begged." Silence devoured the chamber. Nolan's hand twitched once on the wooden bench. And just like that, the story of a family shattered not by strangers, but by blood, came crashing down. The trial never erased the questions. Why her silence? Why his rage? Why do the ones closest to us sometimes carve the deepest wounds? That's the story the town never forgot. And if you think this was haunting, there are darker truths waiting. Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe to the Veil of Secret, where every story pulls you deeper than the last.